welcome to another Quran study. God willing, today we'll be reading from Surah 8, verse 1. Let's all seek refuge in God from Satan the rejected. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Surah 8, the spoils of war, Al-Anfal, in the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. They consult you about the spoils of war. Say, the spoils of war belong to God and the Messenger. You shall observe God, exhort one another to be righteous, and obey God and His Messenger if you are believers. The true believers. The true believers are those whose hearts tremble when God is mentioned, and when His revelations are recited to them, their faith is strengthened, and they trust in their Lord. They observe the contact prayer salat, and from our provisions to them, they give to charity. Such are the true believers. They attain high ranks at their Lord, as well as forgiveness and a generous provision. So, God is, first of all, letting us know about the spoils of war. And the title of this chapter is the spoils of war. So, it is quite significant as we understand, the Quran is a complete and perfect book which is perfectly detailed. And we have details of everything that we'll ever come across that is relevant to our salvation. Now, spoils of war has to do with, spoils or materials that, people will, the believers will occupy in case there was war, and they invaded and they succeeded, and everything that, they capture would be spoils of war. And obviously, the idea is not to take people's resources, but the idea is to, weaken the enemy, so that the enemy can't, fight back. And so all those things, that swords and whatever weapons that they could come across, all of those things are then seized so that the enemy is not able to fight back and attack, basically. So it's basically a form of defense, and something that obviously, if these people had those resources and you allowed them to have those resources, they will not give those resources to the believers. And given that, they have the upper hand in the situation, God allows them to, take control of those provisions. And God says those just, belong to God and His Messenger. And that doesn't mean that the Messenger gets to keep them for himself. It means that the Messenger will distribute it according to the instructions that God has given to the Messenger. Obviously, the Messenger is not to, keep these for himself. And God says, obey God and His Messenger if you are believers. You shall observe God, exhort one another to be righteous, and obey God and His Messenger if you are believers. So all these things, we have to reverence God, we have to observe God, we have to exhort one another to be righteous. We have to remember that. We have responsibility towards ourselves, but we also have some responsibility towards others, to the extent of inviting them to the religion, so everyone can stay on the right path. That's the idea behind being with the believers, so we can remind each other and help each other, succeed, help each other improve, help each other get better. And God says who the true believers really are. People like to call themselves believers, right? But God knows who the true believers are, and you can understand who those people are by the qualities that God describes in the Quran. And God says that one of their qualities is that their hearts will tremble when God is mentioned. So they have deep reverence for God. Their hearts are not stained and rusted and numb to God. They're actually they truly love God and they truly reverence God, and so they understand who God is, So someone who understands who God is, when the word God is mentioned, their hearts feel something, But people who don't believe in God, when you mention God, I mean, it's like you didn't mention anything, right? And that's a sign of a true believer. And God says, when His revelations are recited to them, their faith is strengthened. They're not people who will argue against those revelations, or just have not be affected. There are those people who, when the revelations are recited, when they listen to them, when they come across them, their faith is strengthened. They become stronger. And God says they trust in their Lord. It's very important to put our trust in God. And God says to true believers, they put their trust in God. They understand, they leave things to God that they cannot control, and understand that God is going to bring the best outcome for them. That's trusting in God. They observe their contact prayers, salat, they give the obligatory charity, zakat, and they give, in general, they give from God's provisions. They're charitable people. People who, are not, the kind of people who love the material things too much or love the money too much. They love God the most, so, and they want to get God's pleasure. They want to get the eternal ranks, and to put as much as possible in their post-retirement account. So they're charitable, naturally, because they believe in the hereafter. They attain high ranks at their Lord, as well as forgiveness and a generous provision, right? So the true believers, we know that, they will attain high ranks with God, because they're strivers, they're those who, do all of their practices, and they observe all of God's laws. So naturally, these people attain the high ranks for doing that. Then you have the weak believers, and God tells us who they are also. It says, when your Lord willed that you leave your home to fulfill a specific plan, some believers became exposed as reluctant believers. They argued with you against the truth, even if after everything was explained to them. They acted as if they were being driven to a certain death. Recall that God promised you victory over a certain group, but you still wanted to face the weaker group. It was God's plan to establish the truth with His words and to defeat the disbelievers. For He has decreed that the truth shall prevail and the falsehood shall vanish, in spite of the evildoers. So the weak believers, they're the people who become exposed when they're required to mobilize in the cause of God, right? When they were required to leave their home to fulfill a specific plan, some people became reluctant. Some people became exposed as reluctant believers because they were hesitant. They didn't trust in God readily and make the leap of faith and decide to go. They looked at their worldly circumstances, and they looked at the worldly aspects of it, and if it would be profitable for them or beneficial for them to make that move. And they didn't trust in God to get the best outcome, because knowing that they were doing this for God, and then God will take care of them, right? And then this way, these people were exposed. And then God says He promised you victory over a certain group, but you still wanted to face the weaker group. Of course, if you face the stronger group, would show your strong faith in God, your trust in God. Obviously, you can go fight the weak group. This doesn't, show as much trust in God as, you going and really taking the risk and taking the real strong party that you should normally otherwise be feeling afraid of. Shows that, these people were afraid, and they just wanted to, take the easy way out, basically, So they became exposed, not as hypocrites, but as people who were we're not as good as the real true believers who have real faith in God, who will do anything for God. So God has decreed and they became exposed in this way because God has decreed that the truth shall prevail and falsehood shall vanish. Obviously, all of our true qualities are destined to be exposed, whether, how much of a true submitter we are, this world is designed to expose just that. And we're put in situations every day, to expose our true qualities. And when you're supposed to trust in God in situations, that's why it is so important for us to put our full trust in God, And when we feel that, there's a situation where I might need to put my trust in God, like instead of hesitating, I should take it as an opportunity that I should really put my trust in God and do this with my eyes closed. If, yes, it seems like a dangerous and a risky situation, but I'm supposed to trust in God. If I feel that this is something that is beneficial for my soul, I'm going to do it. And God will take care of me no matter what happens, right? Verse 9, God says, God's invisible soldiers. Thus, when you implored your Lord to come to the rescue, he responded to you, I am supporting you with 1,000 angels in succession. So God supports the believers with his invisible soldiers. And when these people in this particular example, they implored God for their rescue, for their support, God supported them with 1,000 angels in succession, right? And I mean, how amazing that is, because I don't even know what you would do with 1,000 angels, right? I mean, you could just have one or two angels, that would be enough, for you to win the whole war, because the angels are so powerful. But God sends not just one or two, God sends 1,000 angels in succession to help these people, to crush their enemy who was attacking them. Verse 10 says, victory guaranteed for the believers. God gave you this good news to strengthen your hearts. Victory comes only from God. God is almighty, most wise. He caused peaceful slumber to overtake you and pacify you, and he sent down water from the sky to clean you therewith. He protected you from the devil's curse, reassured your hearts, and strengthened your foothold. Inshallah. So it's God's promise that he guarantees victory for the believers. We have to believe that. We have to believe that when it really counts, if you are a believer, God will help you and make you victorious no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing. If you are being righteous, everything you do, God willing, if it's good for you, God will make you successful, right? If it's good for you, you will be successful. If you're doing the right thing, you will be successful, right? But, it requires you to put trust in God, right? We have to put our trust in God before, our expectations from God are met, because we have to meet God's expectations. God always keeps his promise. It's just us, that we have to do our part, to do our share, of what we have to do. Sometimes we have to work hard and do the things that we have to do also, right? But we can only do so much being humans. God knows we're weak. Sometimes we cannot. And in this case, these people were weak in the sense of, they were fewer in number. And so obviously they were willing to fight in the cause of God, but God strengthened them with additional forces, invisible giants that were protecting them and fighting for them. Imagine, going into a war with 1,000 invisible soldiers. How can you be defeated, right? The enemy cannot even see, Imagine someone, faced with a situation like that, and they, let's say, they throw an arrow or they fire a bullet, and the and the angel pushes it, and sends it towards their own men, for example, right? Because angels can do anything, and they can, travel faster than a bullet, much faster. Of course, they are more powerful than you and I can imagine, right? And so, and basically all of that power comes from God. God sends them with those powers. Obviously, all power belongs to God, and we understand God can do anything, right? And so when God is there with His angels, supporting these people, no one can defeat them. And the good news for us is that this kind of protection and this kind of support is not just limited to the people in war at the time of Muhammad. You have, for example, Psalms 91. I mean, God's protection and support is true. There's nothing in the Quran that says that this is limited for those people, right? If you put your trust in God and your faith in God and you do what you're commanded to do, God can promise you the same. God promises you the same support, right? And it's should really, like God says, this should really strengthen our hearts, right? We should not feel weak and powerless and defeated. This should really give us a lot of hope in life in general, right? Because God says He guarantees victory for the believers. Now, this victory is important in all aspects of our life, and God will show it to us. Of course, the believers will be victorious in this life. They'll have happiness in this world and the hereafter. And obviously, when you are faced with fighting with the disbelievers, the hypocrites, you will be victorious. It may be difficult for you to see, the full scale of everything that God is doing around you. But when you look back at the bigger picture, God will show you that if you are on His side, that His promise is true, and He will always help and support the believers, and eventually grant them paradise. Which is, God says, the greatest triumph. Right? There's no other victory more greater. Victory greater than being in the high heaven or being closest to God. Right? That's the ultimate victory. But it starts here, and this is God's promise. Lessons from history. Recall that your Lord inspired the angels. I am with you, so support those who believed. I will throw terror into the hearts of those who disbelieved. You may strike them above the necks, and you may strike even every finger. This is what they have justly incurred by fighting God and His messenger. For those who fight against God and His messenger, God's retribution is severe. This is to punish the disbelievers that have incurred the retribution of hell. O you who believe, if you encounter the disbelievers who have mobilized against you, do not turn back and flee. Anyone who turns back on that day, except to carry out a battle plan or to join his group, has incurred wrath from God, and his abode is hell. What a miserable destiny. So God is talking about lessons from history, as the subtitle says, right? And these lessons are very important for us. And the footnote here says, all wars are governed by the basic rule in 68 and 9. And also, what I want to say is, it says all wars are governed by the basic rule in 68 and 9. 68 and 9 is talking about people who are, fighting God and His messenger. So I think it's very important to look at these verses also. 68 says, basic law regarding relations with unbelievers. God does not enjoin you from befriending those who do not fight you because of religion and do not evict you from your homes. You may befriend them and be equitable towards them. God loves the equitable. God enjoins you only from befriending those who fight you because of religion, evict you from your homes, and band together with others to banish you. You shall not befriend them. Those who befriend them are the transgressors. So it's important, first of all, when we talk about befriending the disbelievers, and who we can befriend or not, the subtitle clarifies it too. It says the basic law, right? So this is the basic rule, right? But then there could be exceptions in certain areas, for example, right? And those edge cases, so to speak, are different. For example, God talks about also not befriending the hypocrites, or also not befriending people who are absorbed in the worldly life. And but the basic law is this. If I have to sum it up, basically, if someone isn't fighting you because of religion, isn't mocking you, hasn't taken a very strong position against the religion, is someone who you have hope for. I mean, you can befriend that person, right? And if that person, but if that person is fighting you because of religion and attacking you, obviously you have to fight back in self-defense. Let's say if it's physical war, they fight against you, then you can fight them, right? You can't aggress upon anybody. And people talk about, for example, not being harsh and stern, but in this case, I mean, they were attacked physically, and they had to physically fight them. Now, in situations where you're not attacked physically, but it's in this era, as we know, these are all mind games, So you have to fight back, right? If someone comes and tells you and tries to confuse you and says, no, God says just ignore them, or something, that's also incorrect, right? God says you have to fight them, and once you fight them, God says don't turn back, don't turn around and flee. People may get into a situation and they feel discouraged or overwhelmed, and then they can turn back, and God says no, this is very wrong, and you cannot do that. You shouldn't hesitate to fight back, and then if you do fight back, make sure you fight all the way till the end. Don't just make an about face and turn away from the fight, because that obviously will have its consequences as well, unless it is to carry out a battle plan, unless there's a specific plan behind it, right? So obviously, in our lifetime now, this situation may not apply because there's no physical fighting at this time. Not to say that won't ever be in the future, but at least right now there isn't. And right now it's all about mind games, right? And so, we have to fight back in the same way. And God says that the believers will not hesitate. Believers will not look for excuses. Believers will be ready to do whatever it takes to do what's right in the cause of God. And God says, as for those who turn away, God says on that day, when the believers are supposed to fight and these people turn around and flee, God says, they have incurred hell and a miserable destiny. So all the believers are supposed to be united like bricks in one column and fight. Obviously there shouldn't be any disunity at that time among them, and people, abandoning the believers and letting them go on their own, for example, right? So God, we're going to continue reading verse 17. God is doing everything. It was not you who killed them. God is the one who killed them. It was not you who threw when you threw. God is the one who threw. But he thus gives the believers a chance to earn a lot of credit. God is here omniscient. Additionally, God thus nullifies the schemes of the disbelievers. You sought victory, O disbelievers, and victory did come. It belonged to the believers. If you refrain from aggression, it would be better for you. But if you return, so will we. Your armies will never help you, no matter how great, for God is on the side of the believers. O you who believe, obey God and his messenger, and do not disregard him while you hear. So the footnote here says, for 8:17, it says, believing in God necessitates believing in his qualities, one of which is that he is doing everything. Without knowing God, there is no belief. 23:84-90. Bad things are incurred by us and executed by Satan in accordance with God's laws. See 4:78-79 and 42:30. Right, so as the subtitle informs us here, God is doing everything, right? As submitters to God alone, we have to remember that all the time. Sometimes we may forget, but we have to remind ourselves that God is running everything, Sometimes things are happening around us and we may lose our composure because we may feel overwhelmed, and we try to control the outcome of whatever situation it is we are in, and we are not able to do that, because we think that we can control it. We think that we can fix things, right? But sometimes, we see that, we're really trying to have a specific outcome, and it's not working in our favor, and we get upset, right? But a believer cannot do that. Sometimes you could be driving, let's say, and someone cuts you off, and you get upset, thinking that this person did this, and how dare he do this, and all that kind of stuff, right? And you forget that God is the one who's controlling everything. God is the one who allowed this person to pass. And if you're unhappy about it, you're objecting, inside, you are forgetting that God is running everything, then you're committing a sin, obviously, because you're not a submitter at that point. You're an objector. It's not the same. Like, for example, if you see an injustice happening, you stand up, whether it's for yourself or for someone else. That's completely different, right? But let's say I'm talking about someone cutting you off in the middle of the road as you're driving, or or something like that. And so, these types of situations, when people get upset and angry, even though things like that will happen, and you understand that even if they're coming from Satan, that God is allowing them to happen, right? When the brothers, Joseph's brothers, decided to throw Joseph in the well, this was not from God, in the sense that God didn't execute that, but it was obviously a test for his father Jacob, but it was in accordance with God's will, right? And God had a plan for him too. And in the same way, when things happen in our lives, like, say, when people decided to throw Abraham in the fire, obviously God didn't do that, right? But God made the fire cool for him, right? God allowed it to happen, and God fixed the situation. God controlled the outcome, right? And so we have to understand that everything that's happening around us, even bad things that are happening around us, God is allowing it to happen. So they should never get us to the point where we get upset and angry and agitated and have anxiety and things like that. We should always remember that God is running everything. Whether it's a situation that we're happy, or if it's a situation that is making us feel not so good, because it's not in our favor, we have to put our trust in God, and we have to understand that God is controlling everything. What we can do at that time, instead of getting upset, instead of getting angry, we can reflect on ourselves, think about maybe something that we did wrong to deserve it, or we can just implore God for the best outcome. It's a chance for us to turn to God, to remember Him, and seek His help. So and things will work out in your favor, right? We have to remember God in the good times as well as the bad times. We can't be like bad weather friends, right? Because those people who turn into objectors when things are going wrong, they're the bad weather friends. When times are good, some people will remember God and submit to God, and when the situation becomes really bad, they'll complain and turn around and object and become disbelievers, right? And so we're not supposed to be like those people, and we're supposed to remember God always and implore Him, during the good times, during the bad times, and trust in Him during those times. And so, like, when these people, went and carried out, their plans in the battle, God says when they even threw, it was not them who were doing it. It was God who was controlling everything, right? The angels that were with them, supported them by God's leave. They were not doing anything. God was doing everything. And God is saying to disbelievers also that, you were seeking victory, and victory did come, but it belonged to the believers, And God warns them that if they return, that, God will also, give them the retribution that they deserve. And at that time, their armies will never help them, because God says He's on the side of the believers, right? When God is, and again, when God is on the side of the believers, then the victory is only for the believers. The disbelievers will always be humiliated, no matter how big they are in number. They will always be defeated. God says, "O you who believe, obey God and His messenger, and do not disregard Him while you hear." Right? So while we hear, we cannot disregard Him. When you know the commandments, you should follow them. You should not knowingly disregard God's commandments. The disbelievers blocked out. Do not be like those who say we hear when they do not hear. The worst creatures in the sight of God are the deaf and dumb, who do not understand. Had God known of any good in them, He would have made them hearers. Even if He made them hearers, they would still turn away in aversion. The righteous do not really die. O you who believe, you shall respond to God and His messenger when He invites you to what gives you life. You should know that God is closer to you than your heart, and that before Him you will be summoned. And then the footnote says, see Appendix 17, when the righteous exit their bodies, they go straight to heaven. So one thing we understand, that God says the disbelievers are blocked out. You even talk to them, you even preach to them. They even hear God's revelations, but they don't actually hear, and they cannot take heed. And God says they're the worst creatures, in the sight of God. They're those who are deaf and blind to the message, deaf and dumb, basically, because they do not understand. If you're deaf and dumb, there's no way for you to be able to, take heed from the revelations, listen and understand, and extrapolate certain understanding or meaning out of it that can benefit you in any way. And then God talks about the righteous, that the righteous do not really die. And there's Appendix 17 that also talks about that. And so it's very important for us to understand what that means, right? When the time of your death comes, obviously, as far as this world is concerned, the believers will die, but they will not experience the excruciating pain that people will experience normally when they die. When the time of their death comes, angels will come and invite them to leave their bodies, and they go straight to heaven, right? And you can read Appendix 17 for more details on that. It goes into a lot of detail about the whole process, entire process. And this verse supports that idea, because God says, invites you to what gives you life, right? And it saves us from dying. Imagine how people are doing everything possible to not die and to live forever. And really, this is the formula that God has given us, that, okay, if you don't want to die, if you want to live, as far as your soul is concerned, the real person, you're not going to die. You're going to live, and you're going to have a beautiful destiny. It's like going to Hawaii or someplace very beautiful that you can imagine, the most beautiful place you can ever imagine, and just going there for vacation permanently, right? And so that's what death would be like for a believer, right? Not scary at all. Given that you are with God and you're going to paradise, it's going to be the most wonderful experience for those people. But for the disbelievers, obviously, it's going to be the complete opposite. And then God is talking about a retribution. It says, beware of the retribution that may not be limited to the evildoers among you. You should know that God's retribution is severe. And the footnote says, 825, a community that tolerates homosexuality, for example, may be hit by an earthquake. So, this might puzzle a lot of people, I assume, and they might wonder, like, if they're not committing homosexuality, for example, like, why would they be punished, for just tolerating it? Yeah, because when you're tolerating it, you're the enablers. You're encouraging, in a way, these people to do the things, right? Let's say, you have a child in your house, and let's say you're a parent, and your child is yelling, and you don't stop the child from yelling. The child is yelling, and you're okay with it. Yeah, it's good. If you want to yell, that's great. I'm with you. I support you. Obviously, you're sending him in the wrong. You're spoiling him, not nurturing him or helping him in any way. And that's the same idea, right? When you have homosexuals and around you, and you're tolerating it, you're not discouraging it, you're not condemning it, you're not trying to talk these people out of it, then you're actually tolerating it. And that situation, God says, that um, uh, retribution that is going to annihilate a homosexual, for example, AIDS, etc., or earthquakes, for example. I mean, they're designed for these people to annihilate them, right? But if you're going to be with them, uh, like morally supporting them, and not trying to talk them out of it, and not telling them otherwise, then you could be a part of it, right? And so this concept just doesn't apply to just to say homosexuality, right? I mean, idol worship, right? You see someone committing idol worship, and you're fine with it. Like, let's say, you get into a gathering where where someone invites you, and you go and you sit there, and they're committing idol worship, and they ask you to join them, right? I mean, what is your responsibility at that time, right? Are you gonna just go along with it? You know, are you just gonna sit there quietly? No, you should. You should have a responsibility. You should um, not just be quiet. I mean, obviously, if you're just being silent too, you're not saying anything. People are not gonna know automatically that what they're doing is wrong, right? And you're if you're just sitting quietly, you're still tolerating it, right? If someone's yelling in front of me, and I'm just sitting there quietly, I'm tolerating it, right? I have to tell them, no, this is not right. What you're doing is bad for you. This is bad behavior. You should not be doing this, right? If your child was doing it and you didn't want to be the one tolerating it, you're going to tell them, like, hey, stop doing what you're doing. This is not good. It's not good for you. It's not good for anybody. And please stop, right? And so if you're just sitting there quietly and just ignoring it, then you're enabling it. You're tolerating it. And this tolerance, is something that this verse is talking about, that, beware of the retribution that will not be limited to the evildoers among you. So these are ways. I mean, God could even just leave it out, like we wouldn't have to do that, right? But God is telling us about those retributions because you are complicit. When stuff is happening, bad stuff is happening. Like, let's say, somebody is using your money to commit atrocities. Going and taking your money to kill people, for example, and you're not saying anything. Or you're not doing anything to, tell them otherwise or do anything otherwise. Then you're complicit in it, right? And that complicity is what brings you the retribution, because in a way you're mediating a bad deed by creating an environment where this sort of a thing is tolerated. You're making it an environment where people are encouraged to be this way because they don't face any backlash or any kind of opposition or anything, or even as just a little bit of embarrassment, right? I'm sure it's going to be an uncomfortable situation for you to be in that position, but as submitters, this is what God commands us to do, to advocate righteousness, to prohibit evil. And obviously, it's not your job to go door to door, every person and tell them what they're doing is wrong. But if it's happening in front of you, around you, you have a responsibility, and you should use it, using your fair judgment. Verse 26, God supports the believers. Remember that you used to be few and oppressed, fearing that the people may snatch you, and he granted you a secure sanctuary, supported you with his victory, and provided you with good provisions that you may be appreciative. O you who believe, do not betray God and the messenger, and do not betray those who trust you now that you know. So again, the subtitle says God supports the believers, right? And so God is reminding the believers that there was a time when they were few, when they were oppressed, when they were living in fear, and God multiplied their number. God gave them His provisions, and God gave them secure sanctuary, and God supported them with victory, and provided them with good provisions that they may be appreciative. So we are also supposed to remember these things, right? When we have bad times, and then the bad times are replaced by good times. When we just forget about the bad times, and we may just thank God once and we forget about it. But if you read the Quran, I mean, we see that God says, recall this was happening, to children of Israel. Recall that, the people of Pharaoh were persecuting you, and all these things, so the people know that, what was happening in the past, it was God's mercy that He stopped them. So you can appreciate God, right? And an appreciation of God is important because it's a form of worship, the form of remembering God, in good terms. And this is something that we also have to do all the time. And then the appreciation should not just come in the form of empty words. It should come in the form of solid action, in the form of a direction that we can take towards God, to better ourselves, right? Being appreciative to God only helps us. God doesn't need our thanks, really. But when we thank God, we grow our soul. When we thank God, we make the right choices by growing our soul, and by being appreciative. We're worshiping God. We're helping ourselves. Basically, we're doing the right thing, because God is deserving of all the appreciation, because He didn't have to do any of it, right? He's just doing it out of His grace and mercy. If He doesn't do it, of course, no one can hold God accountable. Like, no one can say, why didn't you do this for this person? I mean, obviously, there's no such thing, right? I mean, God can do whatever He wants. I mean, like the angel said, God could put them all in hell, all of us in hell, right? But God allowed us this chance. He allowed to give us the message, and He supported us through all these things. He kept sending His messengers and His guidance, and He keeps answering our prayers, and keeps helping us through different situations, in spite of the times that we mess up, and the times that we're weak, and the times that we commit a lot of sins. God overlooks so many. God forgives us, and He still is there to help people who are trying to find their way to God, right? I mean, but we have to do our part, and God says, do not betray God and the messenger. Do not betray those who trust you now that you know. So we should not betray God. We should not betray the messenger. All these things that are expected of us, we should do them, and those people who put their trust in us, obviously, in this situation, we should not betray their trust either. We may have believers around us. We may have our families or spouses who are submitters, and they may have these expectations from us. Also, be submitters and be righteous, right? And so when if we go against that, if we go against God, then you're betraying everybody. But most of all, you're betraying yourself, because you're betraying your own souls, right? Because you are supposed to be sincere to God, and you're supposed to worship God under all circumstances, so that you can be redeemed. So with this, God willing, I will end. If you guys have any comments or questions, please feel free. Thank you.
MashaAllah. Thank you, Brother Kastar.
MashaAllah. Thank you. Good study. MashaAllah. Verses were explained very well. And subhanAllah.
Thank you, mashallah.
Yeah, there's a lot of yeah, putting our trust in God is so important. And I mean, we can't like it can't be overstated either about how important it is. Not just for our success, like in the hereafter in this life, but also our happiness. Like you had mentioned, when you put your trust in God, any anxiety or stress or things that I mean really are coming from our jinns, uh, through Satan, is gonna go away.
Yeah, I mean, those things, can, make you, so stressed out and, never let you, if you're the kind of person who gets, stressed out by things of this world. I mean, obviously, you'll always be stressed because, you cannot control life and you're not controlling it. It's God who's running it. And so those people are always stressed, and you can see like, people have terrible life because of it. The more stressed you are, the more things will go wrong, and just uh life will the quality of life will get worse and worse.
Yeah, mashallah. And there's a saying too. I kind of don't really like it. Like I heard it before submission, but I don't want to repeat it. But it's like it's like a feel good saying. People say, but it's kind of black. I don't know. Like how people say let go and let God. I've seen,
uh
which is I know their
mhm,
intentions are like good, but like I mean it's kind of like under maybe a little undermining. Like we aren't even in control in the first place. Like
mhm,
like saying like, oh God, you have to let God. Like who are we to let God? Like God be
mhm,
glorified. But
mhm,
but I know with like people trying to they're
mhm.
I think they're just trying to say you have to
Yeah,
stop trying to control things and
yeah.
uh,
I
you
always
know.
look at it like when they say let go and let God, like let God handle it.
Hmm.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
leave, like put your trust in God, in
Put
other
your
words.
trust.
Yeah, same thing, right? So let God is something that it doesn't mean that you that God needs your permission.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean he's just saying like, let God take care of your worries because it's as
Hmm.
long as you're the one, trying to control it, then it's not gonna work out.
Yeah, like the prayer of serenity. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's one that's really good. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just true. You know, God is doing everything, and kind of like the example you gave is about the vehicle. You know, like we could make excuses for these people. Like they needed to cut us off because you know they need to
Mm-hmm.
get to their place for some reason. You know, let's say
Mm-hmm.
there was like they just remember they left the oven on, they left the house, and I mean,
Mm-hmm.
uh, it's like overheating things or something. Like it could be that, you know, that was
Mm-hmm.
like that mindset kind of, you know, it's like things won't bother us and we'll be happy regardless of like these things
Mm-hmm.
happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm laughing because I have to go to Morocco and deal with crazy drivers.
Wait, what?
And deal with crazy drivers, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it is tough, you know, because it's like how dare you?
Right.
Like you know, they could be putting other people at risk, and so like we want to
Mm-hmm.
like say no, you shouldn't. You know, I mean, obviously if they
Mm-hmm.
hit somebody or hurt somebody,
Mm-hmm.
so, you know, they have to. There's going to be consequences, like
Mm-hmm.
you know. But yeah, as far as we're concerned, we'll just. But yeah, like these are ways, you know, for us to opportunities to be more purified
Mm-hmm.
and grow our
Yeah.
strength, have our foothold strength.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, our strength and our
Yeah.
foothold, like
Mm-hmm.
bigger situations, and then
Yeah.
now become easier, and then eventually life
Mm-hmm.
just gets
Yeah.
very nice.
Yeah, I think definitely, driving alone can help you learn that and practice that.
Yeah, you know, it's like we have to also, I think, to be very aware of like when we do something too. Like we have to ask God to help us. Like, wait, did I just, you know, because like a few nights ago, like some of these vehicles, whether they're rental, you know, the lights. This is just an example that happened to me. You know, the lights are naturally bright. I don't know why, but my brights are not on. You know, but a lot of
Mm-hmm.
18 wheelers, it's always them because they're probably driving so much, but they're very, very, very trigger happy. They love flashing people. Like even when your brights are on, they jump the gun. And I've seen this for a long time. And then, you know, it was like happening to me because the vehicle I'm currently in. And then like, you know, there was a few times where I like, you know, you know, I was like, oh man, like why you flashing me? And so I like flashed him like 5 times. Like I was taking it personal though, you know. But then I was like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's really they're not doing anything. God's running everything. And I mean,
Yeah.
who cares if they? But I mean,
Yeah, and that's the thing, I mean, what if he was honking at you, right?
right? Yeah, like what if you know? So well, sometimes they'll flash you. That you know they'll do this too. Like when
Mm-hmm.
they have illegal speed traps with patrol
Mm-hmm.
cars, that they'll flash you, like to
Mm-hmm.
let you know, like look, coming up, like beware, this person's got radar, cop or whatever, you
Mm-hmm.
know. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just giving you a heads up that they do that. Like I had that happen to me not long.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw the unit, you know, that was on the side. He was trying to catch people, but
Right.
yeah, it could have been something like that, you know. And here I am, like flashing him 5 times, like real quick, like hey, look, like my brights on, but you know, like, but I really thought about that, and I was like, man, that's not, you know, that's not but like, you know, yeah, I was just, I guess, in the context of like, but yeah, instead, you know, making excuses for these people, you know, they're just, you know, that would be better. Yeah, and some real good points like about tolerating, not tolerating homosexuality. And, as you mentioned too, it really goes for anything, because, uh, you know, because basically, it's not, in a way, you're not being completely devoted to God alone, because we have to advocate and try to, do our part to talk people out of their idol worship and, advocate the truth, forbid evil. And, but, we're not here to try to like force these people, we know that. But,
Okay, is there anyone else has any comments or questions about the verses? Don't be shy.
yeah, there was about the deaf, dumb, and blind. There was somebody,
What happened?
uh, yeah, like verse 22, I was asked like a long time ago. I mean, I wasn't even really like didn't really understand submission like years
Mm-hmm.
ago. But I was asked by a family member. My dad, I think he was just reminding me. he was he was like, why does I don't. He was like actually wondering, and I'm like, no, like it's not because he thought that the deaf and the dumb, like meaning the deaf and the blind, like actual deaf people and blind people. Like why are they the worst creatures? Like why doesn't God
Mm-hmm.
like them? And I'm like, no,
Mm-hmm.
it means like it's like figurative. Yeah, 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 yeah. I remember what like I would remember I
Wait,
was
what
in.
did he say exactly?
It was something along the lines like I remember pretty like I even remember what year of school I was in like at the time because I remember him asking like about but yeah, it was basically like it was kind of like a question slash statement about like why are the deaf and blind, or like what does it mean,
Mm-hmm.
like are the deaf and blind, like why are they you know like an actual deaf person
Mm-hmm.
that's
And what did he
born
say?
and deformity. And I said
Mm-hmm.
no, like it means like it's a figure of
Mm-hmm.
speech, like it means like
Mm-hmm.
someone who has eyes but like doesn't see the truth or refuses to see the truth. That's like the blind person. It's not an actual blind person, like a person like let's say they're born like that or deformed or something, like those people are okay. They're not bad people. Like it means the people that. Um, but he thought, I think he was taking it literal, like he had to be, because
Mm-hmm.
that's why he asked that question. But yeah, I just like
Mm-hmm.
remember that.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I was, I was like, no, like these people, like what, like God would not hate. Yeah, he
Mm-hmm.
was saying like God, I was testing him, like God would not hate, just somebody
Mm-hmm.
just 'cause they're born
Mm.
deaf. So I had a question. I'm not sure if it's like explained. I've kind of wondered it before, but like the righteous do not really die. So for the people, we know that they just move on to the hereafter. So the people that die before the age of 40, uh, is their death, I guess, the same like as the righteous? Like that are fortunate enough to make it to heaven. Like whether it's before 40 or after. Let's just say after 40. We know how like what happens. Like the angels take them joyfully. Um, but like someone who dies before 40, and let's say maybe wasn't like necessarily even righteous, but God knows their situation, like they died at 39 or 35 or something. Do they have the same, is it the same way, where, right?
Sorry, say that again.
So the people who die before the age of 40, they have the same death, like, or not the same death, but like the same departure where the angels, like where they die, the same as, like we see verse 24, the righteous did not really die.
Mm.
It says, when the righteous exit their bodies, they go straight to heaven. So this also means like people who die before the age of 40, right?
Well, it doesn't. Well, the people who die before the age of 40 are
Because they
not.
could be technically unrighteous, but like God knows their situation, so they might.
Mm,
Cause, but it's talking,
yeah.
so yeah, it's talking about like people who like actually like the believers, submitters.
Well, but of course, like I think it is for anybody who's going to heaven, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it wouldn't make sense for those people to be tortured
Right,
and
right.
then admitted to paradise,
Yeah, so like if they're the,
because they didn't even get a chance. Like, why would they be tortured because they didn't even get a chance to make the decision?
right. Yeah, so like their death would just be, I guess, peaceful. And, like the world
Hmm.
of death, it would just be relaxing, and then it would just move on.
So I have a question on verse 25. I know it doesn't say like it doesn't say in the Quran specifically, but I was wondering if this is what happened to Lot's wife. Um, Like, was she tolerating it, and she still got annihilated because of it?
God says she betrayed him.
Oh,
Um, no, I'm not talking right now. All right. So yes, Huda had a question. So she was asking, um, she asked, she says, "Are you talking now? I can't hear you." So I gave my response. Anyone else has any question?
I thought you said it was going to be about one of the verses. Yeah, did have an off topic question, but
Uh-huh. Yeah, I guess we could talk about the off topic.
huh? Wait, now
We
we can
could,
do it.
yeah, we could talk about. I guess if nobody's
Yeah, for
talking.
purgatory, do we um the people who die before age of 40, they go to lower heaven, and that's
Mm-hmm.
not, even though purgatory eventually gets merged, those people
Mm-hmm.
don't go to purgatory. So people who go to purgatory are people who could even be after the age of 40, or somebody that just didn't like do enough, or excuse me, didn't, I mean, really do enough to like get into lower heaven or high heaven, of course, but didn't, um, wasn't as bad. Like out of just God's mercy, they were able to go to
Mm-hmm.
purgatory. But I guess the
Mm-hmm.
understanding correct about all this, and these people that are in there, they don't really know. I guess until like with the day of judgment, because like remember they'll implore God, like please don't put us with these
Mm-hmm.
uh, wicked people, and then like they look at the people of heaven and be like, they're very happy and stuff to
Mm-hmm.
like is that the people? Is that understanding correct? Like those people, those are the people that
So yeah, I mean, the people in the purgatory are not the people who die before 40. Those people go straight to lower heaven. You know that, right? But these are people that it says like they didn't have enough credits to go to lower heaven, but they also, were kind of like not really deserving to go to hell either. So they were in
Right.
the purgatory area. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that answered it.
Mhm.
And I guess they don't know. Is that understanding correct too? Like they don't, like if they're in there, when they go, like they don't know maybe where they're gonna end up, because, or maybe I don't know. Maybe they have an idea,
Mhm.
because like verses that says like, "Oh, our Lord, don't put us with these wicked people," and then they look at the people of paradise and say peace or something, peace be upon you.
Mhm. Yeah, because the people, for example, who are going to hell, they're also not in hell at that time, right? So they're just probably like in the same category of those people who have not gone to hell. They're just in the limbo, you know?
Limbo.
Yeah. But that's why they're imploring God on that day to not
Right.
put them in hell with those people, because they didn't readily go into paradise. Because only people who went to paradise were the ones who were already going to paradise.
Not sure.
Actually, that's an interesting question. But also, he says, my audio, brothers, Chris, peace be upon you. My audio seems to be going in and out. I'm not sure if it's my device or my service, but I'm experimenting with different combos just in case someone was trying to talk to me. Uh, um, yeah, I mean, you, brother, we weren't saying anything in particular directed at you. We were just having general discussion.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
It's good now. I don't know what happened. It was just kind of dead, and I have two different devices, so I just want to make sure that I wasn't missing like somebody specifically trying to talk to me, but I am here mostly.
Mashallah. No, I mean, if you have any comments or questions about the verses or any off-topic questions, feel free to ask. Definitely.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm kind of still thinking about everything. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, we're talking about the people in the purgatory.
Now more about that, like the purgatory. I had another question. So is
Mhm.
it? I guess maybe not, but I just wanted to see your thoughts on this. I'm not sure, but so let's say you actually has like a submitter who, is doing their best, like to try to make up for the sins of the past and stuff. Like the messenger had talked about, wants to live a long time and all that. But there's not, like, once you become a submitter and get the message, you're either going to the high heaven or lowest pit of hell. Like, so there's no, is there a possibility, like, we could go to the purgatory? Let's say our weights, you know, um,
Right.
like kind of like
So,
you said earlier,
mhm.
someone who didn't, they did
Yeah.
maybe some good things, but then also bad things, and then
Mhm.
but it wasn't bad enough, like, for them to go to hell.
Yes, I mean, the thing is that, even among submitters, there will be people who will be in the lower heaven. There'll be, because they're strong believers, then you also have
Right.
weak believers, right? Now, when the messenger talks about you're either destined for the highest heaven or lowest pit of hell, those are those are different people because, those are the people that were with the messenger. They were, the
Uh,
pioneers,
yeah.
and they were going through a different test
Right.
altogether, and now they're going to the lowest pit of hell if they fail, because because I mean, what does that say about these people? Like, if they
Yeah.
are not submitters, I mean, of course, those are going to the lowest pit of hell. But if they are believers, they overcome a huge hurdle. Believing the messenger. I mean, imagine, like, even compared to us, like, it's very different. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine if the messenger came to you and you were like the only person, or like you knew like five other people who had believed the message and were coming
Mhm.
to Quran study, and you were required to believe. I mean, it's a different kind of responsibility, right?
Right.
and
And
uh
plus,
and
you knew this
so
person too. Like, you knew him. Like, it says your friend Rashad is not crazy. Like, like
mhm,
we talked about this verse, and like it's difficult, because like you said,
mhm,
know, like you've known me like for a long time. I'm not, crazy. Like, he's a normal guy. Makes people laugh and stuff, just like all of us, And so
mhm,
yeah, that's also I see what you're saying. Like, it's not.
yeah, but I mean, also, those can apply to people at our time also, but like people from the first generation,
Right.
like, for
We're like the
example,
last.
not like our grandchildren or children, or other offsprings that naturally, grew up, being told that, messenger of covenant was a messenger, and you're following Quran alone and God alone. Like, they didn't
Yeah.
have to go through the same test as us, going through the process of conversion, and you know like, for example, you didn't have to like stop Jesus, worshiping Jesus or Muhammad or anything like that.
Right.
There could be, also people that their parents just told them that they're submitters, and they're like, oh, we're submitters, and they try to do their prayers, and sometimes they messed up, and half the time they did it, and that's kind of like how it went along for them. Like, they were submitters, but not like fully devoted and very serious, or they were trying, but their religion was overpowering, and they were doing mixed good deeds and bad deeds.
Uh,
I mean, of course, their ranks are decided by God, right? So, but the people who were in the first generation, and so who were with the messenger, I mean, yeah, they're either going to the highest heaven or lowest pit of hell, because either they're good, really good people, or they're really bad people.
and then they could also go to lower heaven, and in purgatory, maybe probably
Who?
submitters.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, mashallah.
And the hypocrites among them would go to the, hell. And people say they're submitters and they're not, you know.
Yeah, when we're in situations too that, like, traditionally a lot of people could seem intimidating, but for submitters, like, remembering that God is doing everything, like He's literally controlling these people, like their arm movements, their eyeballs, like their breathing, the movement of their nostrils. I mean, everything. Like, so, it's they can't do anything to any of us, um, good or bad, really. God is doing everything. So, that's how we have to, train ourselves to look at really every situation that way. We don't
Hmm.
fall into, like, and that way, things too, like with time, they don't. We start, like, we have that new look at things in a new light, more accurate light. Like we believe in God's qualities, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the people who rebel against God, like they're doing that, but they're only hurting themselves. You know, they can't hurt anybody outside, you know, God's will.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's what I'm saying. Like we really have to be convinced. Like it's completely up to God whether on every matter. Like every matter is controlled by God. Like it says in I think Sarah Hood. You know, so like whatever thing this person does, or you know, it could be anything. Like uh,
Mm-hmm.
writing a letter in your favor, or just you know. Um, Whatever the situation is, you know, it's all completely controlled by God, you know. So we have to keep telling ourselves these things, you know. We have to stay on ourselves. You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, also in the same way, like when something great happens, you know, I mean, sometimes people become so excited and they or proud, you know, that they'll think that they did it,
Right, right,
you know, and that's also a form of, you
very
know,
true.
idolizing yourself because you're forgetting that God is the one who's doing everything. So, you know, that's why the messenger says, you know, like they don't, I mean, the Quran says, you know, they don't get too excited or too proud,
For
you know,
sure.
and like
Yeah,
Surah 57, you know.
yeah, yeah, very true.
Mm,
Yeah, that's a
mm,
very verse, you know, like how remembering
mhm.
how everything's been already written down for you. And then, you know, also like you said in your sermon, you know, so if you have to have an operation or like even things like dental work or something, you know, coming up, you're not going to worry about like, oh, or is it going to hurt or how
Yeah,
they
even
do.
if you
Like,
do it in Mexico.
yeah. Well, I mean, like those. I mean, well,
I got you.
uh,
I said I got you.
no, but no, no. I mean, like you want to
I'm
choose
just
better.
kidding. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I would rather choose like better. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, like you know, we like you had said in the sermon, like you know, the certain people
Hmm.
think the certain. We have to really be careful
Hmm.
because after I've catch myself, you know,
Hmm.
like I've gotten really, well, I don't want to say I've gotten really good,
Hmm.
but I've gotten a lot better. Like before, I thank somebody at work or like my boss or something. Like I'll thank God, and then or like even when I'm giving credit, you know, I always, you know, I remember to give credit to God, and it's like, you know, if I help
Hmm.
somebody or something, you know, tell them
Hmm.
always bring God. And I don't, you know, sometimes like I feel, you know, we're not supposed to worry about if it makes it awkward for the other person, and we're not being pushy either. But we're just, it's just a reminder, you know, and then they come to respect your beliefs. But yeah, like, you know, if you know, you had mentioned, you know, that God is guiding the surgeon's hands. You know, so
Hmm.
if we were to thank the surgeon after, I mean, like if it's out of you know the common courtesy, like oh thank you, you know, but we're really we know
Hmm.
we're thanking God and we thank God.
Hmm.
You know, out of like common courtesy,
Hmm.
nice, respectful. We're like, you know, okay, thank you.
Hmm.
You know? But it's really God the one that is did a good job on your
Hmm.
operation
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
the case to be.
Yeah.
You know, good, yeah, good and or like if you get a better position or something, it's God that puts you in there.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, we
Yeah.
have to
Oh,
implore God in all these situations, right? So, like when you're going through surgery and stuff, I mean, you have to implore God that, you know, that it goes well, that nothing goes wrong, you know, that, you know, God fixes everything, you know, because how the messenger, the covenant talks about how, for example, that God's angels are the best surgeons and they can also fix things. He's talking about the night of destiny, but God can send angels anytime, if he wants. And fix things or break things, I mean, God willing, nothing bad will happen to the believers. But it should comfort us, knowing that God is doing everything. You put your trust in God, God will reward you for that. Right?
Yeah, like it says, peace. You have peace and security. Really, yeah, because it's the devil who's always after us too, and he's trying to make us. He's coming from all these different angles and stuff. And trying to get us to forget, forget that God is running everything, or if we, even really too, it's if he convinces us that, like, oh no, this person has some control over the situation, like if we think that, we could gain this favor with this individual to get this outcome. Whether it's at work, a job, or activity, or something. Really, that is idol worship, because then you're looking to this other source, or that you think it's doing something. Like, this is like really, it's really serious stuff. Like when we think about it, because in our salvation and our eternal hereafter, and if we attribute power to anything other than God, because we have Lakua Tel Abila, and no one possesses power except God. Yeah, that includes ourselves too, so. It's,
Sorry, I got disconnected.
I got disconnected.
Yeah. Okay, so are there any other comments or questions from anyone? All right, if there are no other comments or questions, thank you all for joining us. God willing, our next English Quran study would be on Saturday. God willing. Saturday. John, it's your turn.
Yeah, this Saturday.
Yeah.
So, 9 o'clock Pacific time, or 9:30.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think we may end up moving that time just for tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So God willing, if that happens, we'll just post in the WhatsApp group, God willing. And thank you so much, everyone. God bless you.
God bless you
God
all.
bless you all.
Amen.
Assalamu alaikum.